What's up, bro?
How's it going, man?
Good. I really appreciate you taking time out being on my show.
Hey, my pleasure. Sorry, I'm not as Instagram savvy as everybody else. Took me a minute.
It's all good. So how you doing during these on the core team?
It's been an interesting year and a half. For a while, we were doing some basketball games remotely. Everything else has been in person. Great to have the fans back. Yeah, looking forward to what the next year is going to be like, and if it's closer to what we all would view as normal and what we're used to.
Right. Good things. So what was it that like inspired you to want to get into the sports and stuff like that?
How much time you got, Rome? We gotta. That's a long story. As a kid growing up, I just loved sports. Loved playing sports. Would play any sport my parents let me, but they wouldn't let me play football. And when I was 12 years old, we're watching a football game. It was the 49ers. That was my team. I knew everything about them. And one of the announcers on TV didn't. And he said something about my team, the Niners. It was wrong. And I was offended. So I said, that guy doesn't know what he's talking about. And my dad laughed at me. But then he said, hey, if you think you can do better, maybe you ought to be a sports announcer. So I said, well, how do I do that? He said, get on your bike. I said, Dad, what's my bike? Just get on your bike. So we ride our bikes, small town here in California, to the house of the guy who did all the public address announcing. And my dad says, my son thinks he might want to be an announcer. Can you show him anything? The guy said, yeah, show up Saturday night, bring your binoculars. So I did. I helped him figure out who made the tackle and all that. And within probably 2 weeks, I think that gentleman saw an opportunity, said, hey, I'm announcing every game at every level. Why don't I pawn off the Pop Warner games on this kid and let him start announcing? So that's it. I started announcing football games when I was 12. Been doing it ever since, one way or another.
Sounds like a good experience.
A great experience and a real lesson, because I was mad my parents wouldn't let me play football. I thought I could have been good. But I've learned in life, Rome, that God's plans are always better than mine. And that was an early indication, especially as I look back. If that hadn't happened, I probably never would have gotten turned on to a career that's brought a lot of enjoyment, a lot of fulfillment, and most of all, some really special relationships.
It's real dope. Big things. So what was the first team you were the voice of, and what team did it lead to you now?
Well, I mean, if you count that story I was just telling you when I was 12, that would have been the Los Banos Junior Tigers Pop Warner team in Los Banos, California, or as I call it, the center of the universe. And I should probably tell you the story, Rome, because everybody gets a kick out of this, which is, probably the first compliment I ever got on my announcing. I'm in between the youngest level and the next level, and this guy comes marching up to our little press box, and he opens up the door, and he looks inside, and he makes eye contact with everybody in the room. And he gets this real confused look on his face. He says, remember, I was 12 years old. He says, well, I don't know where she went, but when that girl comes back, tell her she's doing a great job announcing the football game.
Thought you was a girl?
Oh, yeah. My voice hadn't quite changed yet. And I have the privilege now for the last however many years of announcing Fresno State football, basketball, and baseball on the radio. And, I've been on the mic for guys like Derek Carr and Devontae Adams and Aaron Judge and Paul George, and gotten to call all their games in college, and they're all great people. And that's been fun. And there are probably some times, especially with those guys, where they did something so mind-blowing that my voice probably got so high people might have thought I was a little girl or that 12-year-old boy again. Wouldn't surprise me one bit.
That's funny. So during the moment while you're in a game, how does that feel when you're announcing a game?
That's what I love about it, because I've done a lot of other things in broadcasting, right? I've done TV anchoring. I do some stuff on national TV here and there. I've got a radio show where I interview World War II vets, which is really, really enlightening and eye-opening, fulfilling. But there's nothing like the rush of calling a game as it's happening, TV or radio. One thing I really like about radio is, I have to be the eyes and ears for the people listening. They're not there, but my job is to make them feel like they're there. And I don't know, I'm not following a script. This isn't, WWE or something like that. This is unscripted. Nobody knows. You have an expectation, but you never know what's really going to happen. And every game has something you never thought would happen. And a real great game has something just mind-blowingly awesome that you couldn't have anticipated. So the privilege and the responsibility of capturing that in the moment for people who can't be there, that's a challenge that never gets old. You have to be ready. You have to be prepared. You have to do your best to try to describe in words what you're seeing on the field or the court or the diamond. And that's just a rush for me that never gets old, a challenge that I never get tired of.
Yeah, that's real cool, man. Um, is there any advice you could give, for anybody that wants to get to that level?
Yeah, I think, there's a lot of things. And one of the pieces of advice that was helpful for me when I was that 12-year-old kid who somebody thought was a girl calling the game, now there are a lot of great females calling football games and stuff. The world has changed a lot, and it's great to see everybody getting opportunities now. But one of the pieces of advice was, hey, you should go to Syracuse University in upstate New York, because that's where all the great broadcasters go. And there was a list of them, and there were a lot of guys I had listened to, including some of my favorites like Hank Greenwald and Greg Papa, Bob Costas, and the list goes on and on. And that was a real good experience for me. I learned a lot, met a lot of neat people. But I think the most helpful thing is just getting repetition, whether you're sitting in the stands with a tape recorder, whether you're working on a student radio station, wherever you go to school. It could be your high school, and you have a chance now with technology to do a game on YouTube, on Instagram Live. You can do it right here. I mean, you could just, any game that's happening right now, you could pull up on Instagram Live and announce the game. So I think that the opportunities to get experience are a lot greater. But the biggest piece of advice was some advice that a few people had given me, because everyone says, well, I want to be the next so-and-so. I want to be the next Vin Scully, the next Bob Costas, the next Go Roam TV, whatever. Be yourself. That's the best piece of advice. Be yourself. If you are trying to be someone else on the radio or television than you are in real life, eventually there's going to come a moment where you slip up, where that facade you've been putting on, the fake voice, the fake persona, you're going to forget, you're going to slip, you're going to be exposed. And people are going to be confused. You're just not consistent. So I think that's the most important thing. Know who you are as a person. Make sure that's the person that is connecting with your listeners, with your viewers. And I think that is going to create a deeper relationship and a better connection with those people than you have if you're trying to sound like or be like or look like someone you're not.
All right. It's real good advice. Thank you.
You bet.
What's some new things your fans and people could expect to see?
Some new things. Well, I'll tell you, that's a good question. There's always something new. I mean, this is new. I think this is the first Instagram Live. I've watched a few of them, but I don't think I've ever been a part of them. So this is new for me. And there's so many different ways to connect to people now than there used to be. And I think the big thing is that's a privilege that we have that we shouldn't abuse. Let's be intentional about how we use that it's creating something good, that it's encouraging somebody, that it's showcasing somebody. I think one of the cool privileges of doing what I do is I get to tell stories, right? I mean, that's really my job. I'm a storyteller. I'm telling the story of a game. When I do my show with the World War II veterans, I'm telling the story. I'm letting them tell their stories of the crazy stuff they went through when they were a lot younger than we are now. When I'm announcing the National Spelling Bee on TV, I'm trying to tell you why a young lady or a young man asked a certain question about that word and how it's going to help them and all that. I'm just telling stories. And I think there are a lot of different ways to tell stories now than there used to be. And I'm sure there's going to be more of that in the future. So I think that's the exciting thing for people who are young and getting into this business is you have so many different avenues of connecting with people. And maybe there's something that doesn't exist yet that you're going to think of. Because in today's world, it's possible. And I think when you take some time, because we're all so busy, right? We just get going and going. We get in our routines. When you put the brakes on that and you stop and you take some time to think, hey, what's something that hasn't been done yet? What's a unique way I can connect to people? You're probably going to come up with something. I don't know if I have a great example from my work other than, a lot of the stuff I do is stuff that people weren't doing. The show with World War II veterans, nobody else was doing that. It was just something that God put on my heart. And that led to us starting a nonprofit here called Central Valley Honor Flight, where we take veterans to Washington, D.C. None of those things are things I set out to do, but it was plans that God had that were better than my own plans. There's a little thing I do on my broadcast for this week, Fresno State just played Oregon. This week, the Bulldogs host Cal Poly. But what I'll be doing between now and then is a whole lot of prep work, and I'll be building these spotting boards that I'll use at the game Saturday night. And for each player, obviously I've got his height and weight and his hometown. One thing I like to do, because I think it personalizes things a little bit, is I always make sure I know the high school mascot for every player. You know, what was the high school team he played on? And you
Right.
learn a lot about some creative mascots, man. There's some crazy ones out there. I mean, there's like the Antlers and the Paper Makers and the Hodags and stuff, like words you didn't even know existed. So for one, it's educational, but two, hopefully it adds a personal touch. So let's say there's somebody listening to our radio broadcast from wherever that student on the other team is from, and they hear the name of their high school mascot. They're like, hey, that's cool. That makes me feel a little more important. So that's a little thing that I figured out that not everybody does. I figured out, you know, I could do that. And maybe it adds a depth to the show and adds a little more meaning for somebody who wouldn't necessarily find it. And anybody who's watching this right now, and I see some familiar names and faces that are on the list right now on this IG Live, you know, anybody can do that in whatever their job is. If you take some time, instead of getting caught in that routine and just trying to catch up, you take some time to actually think and brainstorm. And in my case, you know, a lot of times I'll pray, right? I'll pray for inspiration. It's going to come, and you're going to come up with something creative that's really you. And that's, in today's world, I think people value authenticity, a genuine spirit, and that, you know, that ingenuity, that individuality. You can do something that I could never do. And there are people watching this right now who, the same thing, they could have some inspiration that we would never think of.
Right. Big gems. Appreciate that.
You bet.
Well, you know, I don't want to take too much of your time. I really appreciate you being on my show.
Well, tell me what your show's all about, man. Give me the scoop here. I need to know more about the Rome TV. Go Rome TV.
So basically, it's a show. I interview people from all around the world, you know, artists, TV hosts, producers, you know, creatives, other podcasts. And I want to motivate people out there, give them a nice show to watch and to listen to.
What was the most fun interview you've had with all the people you talked to so far?
This was a real good one. Got a couple of them. I got a one with Whitney McClan, Pimpin' Beats, and Little Nico.
All right.
Music people in the industry.
Yeah, I'm glad you didn't ask me to sing or rap or anything. We would have gone to zero watching real fast.
Really appreciate it, though.
Hey, anytime, man. Good to meet you.
You too. Thank you.
Take care.
Okay.